The story opens with a young boy announcing that he is a wizard while he and a girl participate in play fighting. She acts as a monster that eats wizards, so he raises his wooden branch and hits her on the head. She yells out and asks why he actually hit her, while he explains that monsters are meant to lose against wizards. An elderly man observes the children and remarks on how lively they are this morning. The boy recognizes the man as Rabbus. He then inquires about what is needed to become a wizard, while Rabbus clarifies that one cannot simply become one by wishing for it. He describes wizards as the peak of humanity who rule from the highest social ranks, adding that they are nobles and knights who inherited the ability to use magic from their ancestors. He informs the children that they unfortunately cannot become wizards, while a nearby villager asks the elder how he could say such a thing before asking if current rumors are true. Rabbus asks for clarification on what he is referring to, and the man mentions hearing news that a monster has appeared. He confirms that the report is indeed true. He notes that a man named Rop came across it at the entrance last night and describes a creature covered in pitch-black shadows that was a leopard the size of a house. He reassures the man not to worry because the village chief went to the city to request a wizard and believes he will bring one back to subjugate the beast. The girl's mother expresses her relief at this news. She asks her daughter if she heard that and warns her not to go into the forest for now. Rabbus cautions everyone to be careful since killing a monster is almost impossible without a wizard. The villager asks if all the residents have been informed, and when he says they have, he asks if a certain person has been told as well. Rabbus asks who he is talking about. The man explains that he is referring to the shepherd on Hisarul Hill. High up on the hill, we see a shepherd named Turan. He rests while looking up at the sky and thinks about how dull his life has become. He reflects on viewing the same scenery and the same day over and over again. He wonders if he will eventually forget how to speak. Rabbus arrives and calls him a pathetic brat. He remarks that the sun hasn't even set yet and he is already slacking off, while Turan tells him to move because he is blocking the sunlight. Rabbus yells that he lacks manners and asks if he is still holding on to a grudge from a past incident. Turan asks if he is talking about the time his mother died, and the old man tried to quietly turn the sheep into shared property. Rabbus simply clears his throat in response. Turan says that if that is what he means, then yes, declaring that he is not generous enough to share his mother's inheritance and stating they are not close enough for pleasantries before telling him to leave. Rabbus shouts in frustration at the young man. Turan glares back and asks what he wants. He informs him that a monster has appeared, causing the shepherd to ask about it. Rabbus explains that it is a leopard the size of a house that Rop found. Turan admits that the situation is a serious problem, while Rabbus notices that he is not even scared despite being the most likely target. He tells him to be careful since the village chief went to request a wizard. He claims he only came because he was worried about him, but Turan thinks the old man is not being very honest. He suggests the man was actually worried about the sheep and not him, as Rabbus prepares to shout again. Turan tells him to get lost if he is done talking because his breath smells like rot. The old man walks away into the distance. Turan reflects on how monsters are beasts that wield mysterious power and magic. He considers that if humans have wizards, then beasts have monsters. He is pleased that a wizard is coming because it means he can finally see one in person. However, he wonders if a wizard summoned by a rural village chief will even be anything special. Still, he wants to see just how strong they truly are. Suddenly, his nose catches a whiff of something. Turan realizes the smell is coming from blood. He heads down into the forest and follows the scent. He says he is sure the source is in this direction. He focuses harder on the scent and walks in that direction, but suddenly he stops. He looks down and sees Rabbus torn into literal pieces on the ground. He thinks about how the man told him to be careful, yet went in first anyway, reflecting that he did not expect the blood smell to belong to Rabbus. He notes that this is not a wound an ordinary wild animal could make. He is sure that it has to be the monster. He hears something approaching as a massive paw lands on the ground and a large monster appears. Turan looks back while the monster creeps closer and he stares directly at it, realizing that the reports were true and a monster really exists. Back in the village, the boy playing wizard asks his father how strong a monster is, and if it is true that adults cannot beat it. His father says they are insanely powerful, explaining that if ordinary adults rush it, they won't even be able to collect their bones. The child asks what will happen to their village if they cannot beat it. He tells the boy not to worry because the village chief will bring a wizard to subjugate the beast. The boy asks if the wizard will lose to the monster. His father says that of course they won't lose, describing them as great beings born with the power of magic who will kill the monster with a single word. As the beast lunges at Turan, he looks at it and commands it to die. The command causes the monster to backpedal and create distance. It snarls at him as he releases an aura. He wonders if his power is not working, The monster leaps again and he tells it to stop. The creature pulls back once again. He reflects that he knew killing it would not work but wonders why it cannot even be stopped. The monster attacks but Turan dodges the strike. The beast turns and sees him off to the side. Turan decides on a plan and reaches into his coat. He pulls out a rock and says that a shepherd should do what a shepherd does. The beast prepares another strike. He tells the stone to harden and places it in his sling, while his eyes glow gold as he tells the stone to become faster and swings the sling. He takes a step forward and tells the stone to pierce through. The stone flies with a speed that seems to break the sound barrier. The rock flies toward the beast at full speed, and it is so fast that the monster can only dodge it slightly. The stone grazes the beast while cutting its ear and flying into the air. The beast dashes towards him with its mouth open and ready for a final attack. Turan says that it is actually aiming for the head. The rock suddenly stops in the air. It twirls and smashes into the back of the monster's skull, blowing it off. He stands over the corpse and reflects that this is his first time using the move on a monster. He wonders if he should toss the carcass into some valley. He grumbles that those village bastards really put him to work. Turan is a wizard. He realized his special abilities 8 years ago while he was only 10, at which time the young boy made logs fly through the air. Excitedly telling his mother to watch the logs flying, the child called out to her and announced his ability to create fire and wind. But his mother screamed for him to stop, and he reflects that it was the first and last time she ever got angry. Asking what was wrong, he was told to come and have a chat with her. She then asked if he wanted to live with her for a long time. Turan answered that he did. She made him promise to never use this power from now on, insisting that he must never use it in front of other people. She asked if he remembered the story about the noble and the knight. Confirming his memory, he listened as she explained that magic users are called wizards regardless of their status. She noted that nobles and knights are fundamentally different. Nobles are descendants of divine beings called the Freyans who came to save humanity, while knights are descendants of nobles mixed with humans. The boy confirmed his understanding. She clarified that this is why they differentiate between ranks even among wizards. Explaining that he inherited power from his knight father, she warned of evil nobles who treat knights like slaves. She told him to remember that nobody can know he is a wizard. 8 years have passed since that day. Turan has continued to uphold that promise to his mother. He declares that the promise will not be broken. He has no desire to reveal himself as a wizard or to descend the mountain. Suddenly, someone pounds on his door and yells for him to come out. Turan opens the door and goes out to meet them. He yawns and asks if they are claiming that he killed Rabbis. The villagers grab him by the collar and shout that he is shameless. They accuse him of hurting Rabbis and throwing him out to be eaten by monsters. He silently considers why they want to frame him. He notes that the oldest man in the village died alone instead of the young men who were too scared to fight. He realizes they think this is the best way to shift the blame from themselves to him. A villager tries to punch him, but Turan dodges and thinks that magic is convenient. Headbutting the man, he reflects that a strong wish happens at the cost of mana, and as another villager charges, he whispers for him to fall over. As the man falls to the ground, Turan notes that he does not need to start a fire. He just uses his power a little bit so that it is not obvious, just enough so that they do not die. He declares that he will dominate them. The fight continues as everyone charges at him, but after some time, all of the men are defeated and lying on the ground. For 8 years, Turan has hidden the fact that he is a wizard. He tells the men they should have used that strength for the funeral of Rabbis. Asking the nearby women if they are here to fight too, they reply that they only came to see him. He tells them to take those idiots down with them. Inside his home, he reflects that it is going to be chaos in the town again. He suspects they will use this as an excuse to rip him off when he goes to trade. He decides he can simply beat them up until he gets a fair deal. He thinks he gave them a proper whooping and they should not be back. Loud knocking begins again and he calls them insane. He throws open the door and asks who it is. He finds a tall man standing there. The man apologizes and says he thought he could ask for a favor in his travels, wondering if he has disturbed him. Turan wonders if he is a traveler. He apologizes and notes that a few uninvited guests just came by moments ago. Reflecting that his mother taught him manners, he wonders if that was proper, feeling awkward since he never talked nicely to people in this town. He observes a traveler with a sword in this sleepy old town. He tells the man that if he is looking for an inn, he should look elsewhere, but the traveler's stomach rumbles loudly. Turan sighs and tells him to come in. He prepares a meal and explains that he is not well off, so they do not have much. The man calls it a feast and notes that Turan must have never met someone from outside the town. Turan says that is right. He explains he was born and raised on this hill and has lived as a shepherd all this time. He notes that it is rare for this small town to get tourists. The man looks at him and finds it interesting. Commenting that for someone who grew up as a shepherd, he is well versed in manners, the man assumes his parents taught him well. Turan explains he learned from his mother, but she died a few years ago due to an illness. The man says she raised a proud son and is surely among the gods in a palace in the heavens. He thanks the boy once again, while Turan says he just lives the way his mother taught him. He asks what brings the man all the way out here to this country town, and the man explains he was asked a favor. Turan asks what kind of favor, so the traveler says they were looking for someone to take care of a monster puma. He declares that he is a wizard. Turan realizes he must be the wizard the village elder talked about, and the man says that is right. He asks if he can ask a question now, and Turan says sure. The man explains that he senses a monster in this area, but he does not see one. He finds it weird that Turan knows about the elder and the monster yet remains calm. Nodding that if the monster went for a human, it would be him, he asks if Turan is scared. He remarks that Turan seems awfully brave for a shepherd. He asks Turan who he really is. Turan remembers asking his mother why nobody can know he is a wizard. She explained it is because of the bad nobles. Comparing nobles to shepherds and knights to the dogs that nobles keep, she warned that they might treat him with love, but they can sell him off or sacrifice him. She told him she does not want that kind of life for him and asked if he wanted to keep living with her, to which he said yes. She told him to remember that nobody can know he is a wizard and warned that if other wizards find out, they will separate them. And they would turn him into their shepherd dog to be discarded at any moment. She told him that to avoid being found out as a wizard, he might eventually have to kill people. Turan thinks to himself that this must be what the situation has come to, while the older man asks if he is unable to respond to the inquiry. Kjorn stares at him for a moment before declaring that making such a face simply makes his joke feel awkward, and then he lets out a nervous laugh. Turan realizes it was only a joke and apologizes for lacking a sense of humor, while Kjorn insists he is the one who should apologize as he realizes he must have flustered the young man. He reflects that it is his first time hearing a wizard joke, which is why it caught him off guard, while the wanderer remarks that the reaction was so entertaining that he took the teasing a bit too far. He notes they haven't introduced themselves properly and expresses that it is nice to meet him. The old man reveals that his name is Kjorn and describes himself as a wanderer. Turan feels he should have introduced himself first and identifies as a shepherd. He states that he is 18 years old this year, to which Kjorn responds that he will be 75. Turan thinks Kjorn looks very good for his age, nodding he doesn't look old at all, while Kjorn explains that wizards age much more slowly than ordinary people and enjoy significantly longer lives. Turan asks how he ended up becoming a wanderer in the first place, and the man explains that after serving the Arabian family for 60 years, he finally left. He says that in his later years, he desired to roam from place to place without the need to settle down, and Turan calls the idea romantic as the two of them continue their harmless conversation. Turan reflects that sharing a conversation with a good person like this is something he never realized would be so enjoyable. They continue chatting until the sun begins to rise over the horizon. Kjorn realizes he didn't notice how much time he was spending as the light grows. He hands over a coin of Arabian silver, explaining that it is the purest of silver coins and worth more than the meal. Turan accepts the payment gratefully and wishes the man a smooth hunt, while Kjorn tells him to stop acting like they will never see each other again. He suggests he might come by a few more times to mooch off him before he eventually heads out. Later in the day, Turan walks out to the field when it is time for the sheep to graze. He commands the animals to gather, causing them to look at him and begin walking his way. He reflects on the fact that this was the first time he has ever met another wizard, and wonders how long it has been since he shared a conversation that felt so naturally comfortable. Turan notes the ease and humor that naturally seeped into the man's speech was more than any adult he's ever met. He considers him a truly good person, recalling that the man even returned with a wolf. Turan had always thought knights were just emotionless hunting dogs used by arrogant nobles. He wonders how he is supposed to tell the man that there are no more monsters on Hisaril Hill. Meanwhile, Kjorn walks through the forest and notes that the surroundings feel strange. He sees traces of a battle but notes that he cannot feel a monster's presence anywhere. He looks up and discovers the rock from the sling embedded deep in a tree, wondering if the monster was already hunted and who in the world could have done it. He considers if the village chief hired another wizard, but he feels relieved that someone made things safe. Suddenly, he senses something and turns around to see the monster walking toward him with its face ripped apart. It releases a blood-curdling howl as Kjorn identifies it as a monster's wraith. He wonders who would do something like this as the monster attacks him, and he leaps backward to avoid the strike. He knows that failing to absorb or disperse mana from a dead monster's corpse turns it into a wraith, and he notes that a wizard who hunts monsters would certainly know this fundamental fact. Leaping high into the air, he concludes that the person who killed the beast was definitely a wizard, and he asks why they would leave it to become a wraith or if they were simply ignorant of the outcome. He reasons that a novice knight who doesn't know the basics could never have killed a monster like this. He wonders if they had some other intention, but decides that either way, he must destroy it. Drawing back a bow made of sheer lightning, he launches a magical arrow forward. The magic simply disperses as soon as it comes into contact with the monster's body. Kjorn asks if the monster's mana is vastly stronger than his. Suddenly, the monster disappears into the ground. He wonders if it is trying to counter magic with magic and wonders where it has gone. The creature begins to appear from his own shadow and looms over him. It swings down and strikes his arm, causing blood to fly from the impact. Kjorn realizes this is not a level a mere knight can contend with in battle, nodding that one would need to be at least a lower-ranked noble to have any chance. The monster sends Kjorn backward as he reflects on running into a wraith of this caliber in a remote village, and he thinks that you really never know what life will throw at you. The beast continues to change its shape into an even more grotesque and horrific form. Kjorn believes this is as far as he goes but refuses to die obediently. He vows that even if he dies, he will take the monster down with him. He plans to concentrate all of his mana into his hand for a final effort and stab the creature directly the moment it lunges at him. As the monster and Kjorn charge at each other, something shining comes flying out of the jungle. It was a rock that hit the monster hard. Kjorn is baffled as he watches the creature fall on the ground. Tyran approaches and asks if Kjorn is all right. Kjorn remarks that the shepherd's joke is quite startling too, but he is just surprised to see him. He realizes the boy is a wizard and asks why he didn't tell him the truth. Tyran remains silent, so Kjorn decides to change the question and asks why he helped him, nodding that the boy could have just walked away and let him die. Tyran says it is simple as he recalls the night Kjorn brought him a dead wolf. He remembers asking why the man went so far for a simple favor, while Kjorn wonders what he is talking about as Tyran continues. He notes that with his skills, the man could earn a lot more money more comfortably. Kjorn calls the villagers pitiful people, and Tyran asks in what way he means that. He describes them living on the frontier and trembling in fear without basic protection, while Tyran argues that it isn't the man's fault, but Kjorn explains a wizard inherits the power of a god, so they should live with pride by protecting powerless commoners. He admits that not every wizard thinks this way as everyone has their own way of living. Tyran smiles and tells him exactly that while the monster rises for another attack. Kjorn tells him to listen carefully because this is not a level they can handle. He warns it is a monster they cannot fight unless they are at least a noble, and he tells Tyran to inform the village chief immediately and help everyone evacuate. He vows to hold the monster off here. Kjorn admits he talked big but doesn't know how long he can actually last, but Tyran tells him that it is okay as Kjorn asks what he is saying. Tyran tells him if the attack he just used managed to land, then everything is going to be okay, while Kjorn asks what he is talking about, wondering if that attack wasn't his full strength, and he thinks a young knight hiding in the mountains couldn't hunt a wraith that even nobles deal with. That's what Kjorn thought at first, but he realizes what he is seeing isn't just a small connection made in a rural village, nor is it the reckless bravado of a young knight who ran from nobles. The scene before his eyes could be the beginning of a wizard who will turn the world upside down. Tyran declares that he was also curious about what his limits truly are. As Tyran stands before the monster, he declares that he wants to test his limits. Kjorn announces he will not permit the boy to face this alone, warning that despite his remarkable talent, this opponent is too formidable for them not to join forces. As the monster attempts to strike him, a sudden attack sends it flying. Kjorn realizes he would only be an obstruction since he could not even react to that previous attack. He acknowledges that at this moment, he provides no assistance to his companion. He decides that his current role is to help the young shepherd's talent truly bloom. Meanwhile, Tyran stands firm while launching a continuous series of attacks at the beast. However, he realizes the situation is not as favorable as it seems because his physical strikes are taking no effect. Kjorn shouts that it is impossible to kill a wraith with physical attacks alone. Tyran asks how he is supposed to slay the creature then, and Kjorn instructs him to use fire or lightning. The boy's eyes begin to shine as fire appears, yet it simply bounces off the monster, leading him to observe that it is not working. Kjorn is shocked to see that Tyran doesn't understand that establishing proper causality is a basic requirement for applying magic to another living being, wondering if the boy lacks fundamental common sense. He realizes now that Tyran was the one who killed the original monster and allowed it to become a wraith. This leads him to the conclusion that Tyran has never actually absorbed mana in his entire life. He tells Tyran not to simply light a fire but to create the flame and then shoot it at the target, yet he remains stunned by just how strong the boy is already. Tyran catches his balance and begins to imbue the fire into his hand. Kjorn reflects that while making fire isn't difficult for a wizard, controlling it requires separate training. Turan performs the task instantly, creating a powerful fire. He steps forward before hurling the flames at the monster. The flame explodes upon impact, causing the monster to scream as it burns alive. Kjorn urges him to keep his mind focused on the spell, explaining that he must keep pouring mana into it so the fire does not go out. He insists that everything about the wraith must be burned away as Turan continues to imbue his mana into the attack. His eyes shine like a rainbow as the flames grow more violent. Kjorn cannot believe they actually won and reflects on how absurdly strong that wraith was,